Hey guys, Corey Poirier here. Welcome to Blue Talks, and I hope you enjoy this video.
All right. Hello, everybody. So happy to be here. This is a beautiful room. Thank you to the University of Toronto for welcoming us here in this room called the Music Room in the Heart House. You can't see the architecture that I'm looking at, but it's just spectacular. The people are spectacular, and this is a fond memory for me because I lived in Toronto many years ago when I was a teenager. So happy to be back. Thanks again also to Blue Talks for welcoming me on the stage. It's a real honor to be here. So, people see my life today and they assume that I always had wings. But the truth is, I grew up in a home that never wanted me to fly. So I fly airplanes across continents. I'm a ferry pilot. What that means is I bring an airplane from one owner to another owner, but the new owner doesn't want to actually fly their airplane across the ocean most of the time. In recent times, in the next year, I'll be flying a lot of airplanes from Florida to India via Greenland, Iceland, etc. I fly not big airliners. I fly little airplanes with one engine, and there's two of us in the front. That's what I do now. I also scuba dive. So people say, you don't like being on the ground, do you? No, I like to be in the air or under the water, but not on the ground necessarily. But sometimes on the ground I stay. I live on properties where I can literally walk out of my house, take my airplane out of the hangar, and take off. And I do that in two places, Florida and Quebec. And in both places, I have a house on a grass runway. I have a wonderful family. I have a son and a stepdaughter. I have a husband who I'm really good partners in crime with. Not real crime. And I have a wonderful life that I'm grateful for every single day. And I really mean that. Like every day I wake up and I always do my gratitude in the morning and I do my gratitude at night, because I think that if you're not grateful, then you can always complain and bitch about everything you don't have. But it's so much nicer to just recognize what you already do have. But that version of me, the woman standing right here now in front of you, is not the girl I once was. Because the life I just described didn't come from a smooth beginning. There was lots of turbulence and clouds. It came, in fact, from the exact opposite. I come from a French traditional family. And if anybody knows what that means, and I'm not talking about Quebec French, I'm talking about France French. And that means that when you're in France and you're growing up and you're a girl, your destiny is to get married, ideally with something wealthy or has a good status, to have kids, to be the best housewife, to know how to cook and dress tables and dress nicely and take care of your kids. And that's the plan. You do not think of school or higher education or flying or, God forbid, motorcycle riding or, paragliding like I did, jumping off cliffs when I was 18. You don't do those things. And then when I was 3 years old, my parents divorced because my grandfather couldn't stand my dad. And then they took away my dad from me for 20 some odd years. Back on a little bit on that later. And then my mom was so afraid of her own dad that, of course, she couldn't protect me from any of that. And so there was lots of abuse, lots of emotional chaos, and no real sense of safety. So I had no permission to dream or imagine a different life. And when you grow up in an environment like that, you don't just lose your childhood. You lose your ability to imagine a different future. So when I turned almost 18, I left home really fast, as soon as I could. And I spent 8 years looking for my dad because I grew up, I thought, you know what? It's something really weird. I feel like I don't belong here. Like I don't look like anybody else. I don't think like anybody else in my family. And the only person missing in my family is my dad. So if I'm like anybody, it's got to be like him. And I finally found him, thanks God to the internet, in 2000. And I spent 7 years knowing him. We were living in different countries with an ocean in between us, but at least we got some time together. We were able to catch up a little bit of the 23 years we were not together. But then 2007 happened, and my mom and my dad passed away 2 months apart. And that was Didn't think that was going to happen. That was like a really big stress. Because for me, it was the second time. Take a moment. It was the second time I was losing my dad. But oddly enough, through all the grief and all the pain, something unexpected happened. I actually had a bit of relief. The first relief came from the fact that my mom had been like really bitter and really miserable her whole adult life, at least the time I knew her. And I was relieved for her that she no longer had to suffer and live. The second relief actually came in the storm of, for the first time, the previous generation couldn't control me. And I suddenly had space to breathe and the freedom to choose my life. So it was like the lowest moment of my life, and yet strangely, it was also the moment when I felt my wings begin to unfold, figuratively and literally. So I started to learn to dream. I started to do the inner work, and we've heard some incredible speeches, and there's so many things I wanted to add, but I don't want to take too much time. But there's one thing in particular that I learned about spirituality. It was my negative self-talk that I had to get rid of, and I had to heal from the inside out. But I didn't trust myself to know better. I hadn't been guided or taught by anybody, anything that had to do with inner self. I was afraid of making the wrong choices, being with the wrong people, learning from the wrong people and associating with them. But slowly I allowed myself to imagine a different future for the first time. But I realized fast that dreaming was not enough. I had to learn how to live differently and how to think differently. And that's when my spirituality allowed me to encounter Roger. Roger is his French name. He was my coach. But I met him as a business coach. And then really rapidly, I remember talking to my husband at the time about this coach in business. And then one day he looked at me, he goes, "But you never talk about business when you come back from these meetings. It's all like spirituality." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. That's really weird, isn't it? But it works." And so he helped me heal. And I did some really, really deep work on myself. And I did some really hard exercises. And I cried a lot. But I learned that crying was cleansing. And I learned to understand, most of all, what my worth was. I finally realized that I actually had really lots of value. And so I got back into singing, and I even launched an album. And as I grew, magic happened. When you grow and you become a spiritual being and you embrace who you are from the inside out, the right people begin showing up. You end up in the right place at the right time, with the right words, with the right everything, just like magic. And you're like, wow, pinch me. Is this Harry Potter? And then opportunities just kind of align. I mean, the things that I have lived in the last 15 years I started this process, I can't even I have so many stories. I think I'm going to write a book. Corey, I'm going to write a book. And then my life began to just flow in a new direction. And around that time, flying re-entered my life. And with it came a tool that would become my compass for just about everything. That tool is called Aviate, Navigate, Communicate. Every pilot learns those 3 words, and we learn them by getting them drilled into us. Because when you're flying an airplane, and I'm going to curse, and shit hits the fan, you got to aviate first. And what does that mean? Aviate is asking yourself the question, do I know where I'm going? And in flying, that means fly the airplane. And when we say fly the airplane, it's like hands on the controls, feet on the pedals, check your altitude, check your heading, check everything and make sure your gauges are good. You're not like going west when you should be going east, and you're not losing 2,000 feet when you should be maintaining at 4,000. That's what that means. It's like basic flying. You don't do anything else. You don't think of anything else. You're just focused there. In life, I ask myself, do I know my own destination? Do I have any idea where I'm going? What I want? What makes me get up in the morning? What makes me vibrate inside? Do I know that? So I learned to choose my direction intentionally instead of being on the famous autopilot. Because who's on autopilot once in a while? Even me sometimes. Then it's navigate. What's navigating? Am I staying on course and adapting? So if I'm going from Toronto to Moncton, am I heading southeast or am I going northeast? Well, I sure hope I'm going southeast because I'm not going to make it to Moncton. I'm going to make it to Goose Bay. And that's not really where I'm heading, is it? So in flying, I follow the route and I adjust for weather or obstacles or whatever else. Sometimes it's airport closures or ATC saying, get out of the way, there's a jet coming in and they're going to hit you, so you better move right. In life, I check if my actions match my dreams. How often do we check if our actions match our dreams? My dream is to be on stage at the Bell Center, and I'm going to spend 20 hours this week doing my accountings. Is that going to get you on stage? Probably not. In life, so in life, what I have to do is I have to adapt to setbacks and unexpected turbulence. Right? Things happen. Life happens. And so you have to adjust yourself all the time. And the last word, and oddly enough, it's the last one. Everybody thinks that as airplane pilots, we're always communicating to ATC. We're not. I've actually told ATC, stand by. Like at a major airport, stand by. And they're like, roger that. And I'm like, okay, right now I need to focus, because if I don't navigate and Aviate and navigate first, I'm going to fall out of the sky, and it doesn't matter if I speak to ATC, because I'll be killing myself before I get to talk to them. So you know what? My life is more important than ATC. So in life and in general, am I speaking wisely to the right people? So in flying, we communicate our intentions. November 1, 2, 3, 5, request to climb 2,000 feet. November 1, 2, 3, 5, approved or denied. And we also need to communicate to stay connected. And in life, we have to ask ourselves 3 questions. Am I speaking kindly to myself? How many of us speak poorly to ourselves? How many speak so poorly to themselves that if you were saying it out loud, somebody would look and go, wow, you got to change that. Okay? Am I communicating with the right people? And am I reaching out for support when I need it? Who has a really hard time asking for help? Yeah, we got to work on that. Keep working on it. So aviate, navigate, communicate. It keeps airplanes in the sky, and it kept me rising even when everything felt heavy. So I'm proud to say to you today in front of you in this stage that I broke a generational pattern. I was the first one to have a university degree and to actually live my life on my own terms. I built a life that no woman in my family before me was allowed to live. And I didn't just heal, I learned to soar, because I also fly gliders without an engine. And if I could do it starting from where I started, anyone can. So ask yourself, am I flying my life? Am I staying on course? Am I speaking wisely? Because the moment you do, you stop surviving and you start soaring. Thank you very much. Woo!